So I have a 2-year-old and an 8-week-old.
Pela is about to subject these babies and their mothers to EMF radiation.
Well, we wake up really early, around 5:30 a.m.
Nap times and snack times and meal times and...
What sort of company would subject babies to EMF radiation?
When we change a lot of diapers.
We like to go for walks, but it's definitely different every day.
So have you ever heard of EMF radiation? Kind of, like I've heard of it, but I couldn't describe it for you.
Yes, Pela subjected this pregnant woman and her baby to a radiation she didn't understand. But not just content with subjecting one woman to this radiation, they subjected all of these women to a radiation they hadn't even heard of.
No.
No.
From my phone, I assume.
Electromagnetic fields.
Also known as radiation, and is found in devices like microwaves, X-ray machines, and your phone. You wouldn't stick your head in a microwave.
Of course not, which is why it's such a horrific thing that Pela has done here by deliberately irradiating all of these women with EMF radiation. Now you might be wondering how they could do such an evil act and get away with it. I mean, who knows what the safety implications could have been?
I try to keep it away from him as much as I can because I'm paranoid.
I mean, who knows? People in 10 years might find out that there's EMF radiation that Pela subjected these babies to.
Maybe in 10 years they'll say, oh, all those phones that you were using and, keeping them around your baby, that was unsafe.
Might turn out to be harmful to the babies.
Yeah, that's really neat. I didn't even think of that.
Pela deliberately irradiated babies.
Hovels radiation glorious.
Yeah, this is a pretty shameless and really, really ugly variant of the Zorb.
I'm sure by now most of you have heard about the negative effects of Wi-Fi and the 5G network. It's carcinogenic. It can cause cancer. So we are exposed to massive amounts of radiation every day. But I have the answer for you. It's called the Zorb, and it looks like this.
Try and convince people that their phones are dangerous using words like radiation.
Hovels radiation glorious.
All as part of a sales pitch to sell a massively overpriced product that, even if it did work, which it doesn't, would actually increase the radiation that you get from your phone, not decrease it. I mean, really, predating on the ignorance of overprotective mothers with newborns to sell a scam product. That's pretty shamelessly unethical behavior, even for Pela. Even their catchphrase makes no logical sense. The phone communicates using radiation, so at some point, if you reduce the radiation, you're going to reduce the signal. Of course, the whole thing is basically fear-mongering on the word radiation to manipulate and deliberately terrify these women and the people who they're advertising this to that there's something they should fear in this EMF radiation. And there's a lot of panicky idiot media out there panicking about what they don't understand.
Could where you carry your cell phone make you sick?
Radio frequency emissions from the school's strong wireless network has triggered headaches, nosebleeds, and nausea.
Radio frequency radiation are in fact cancer-causing and are perhaps a cause of neurological diseases and cognitive problems and developmental problems.
No, they're not. In fact, if you're being objective about this, you have more to fear from light bulbs than you do from mobile phone or Wi-Fi transmitters. You see, when most people hear the word radiation, they think of things like this. Ironically, most of this isn't EMF radiation. Most of the radiation in nuclear reactors is high-energy particles. Now, your eye is only sensitive to a small part of the EM spectrum, obviously the visible part of the spectrum. Now, you drift off into the red end and you get into the infrared, which is good for animals that hunt by heat, infrared cameras, deep space telescopes, and that sort of thing. And you get beyond that, and you get into microwaves, which actually penetrate quite a long way into things that contain water, like a few centimeters, that sort of thing. And you get beyond that into radio waves, and they have much more penetration, but these are really low energy photons, to the point where there really isn't anything that you can do with them unless you get a really, really powerful source, like for instance a microwave oven, which is just a very powerful microwave source. Interestingly, the wavelength used in microwaves and for Wi-Fi are basically the same. The only real difference is intensity. So microwave ovens clock in at about 1,000 watts, while your typical router clocks in at maybe 1/10 of a watt if you're lucky. Other than that, the microwaves that you're being subjected to by your router are exactly the same as those from your microwave oven. And all it does is produce an absolutely minuscule amount of heating. I mean, ballpark figures, your body runs at about 100 watts, and it remains roughly constant in temperature, which means that you're irradiating 100 watts as well. Now, your body's fairly versatile, so, you can modify all this by adding clothes and insulation, all that sort of thing. Or you can increase the amount of power that your body is generating by doing exercise. And of course, because your body temperature is going to remain constant, you've got to dump a load more power to do that. So when you're doing exercise, you can quite easily crank it up to 200 watts of power generation while dumping 200 watts to keep your body temperature constant by sweating and the such like. Cool. So now you can see that if I were to embed a Wi-Fi router transmitter surgically into someone's body, it's going to locally heat their body up by about 1/10 of a watt. Yeah, it's operationally insignificant even if it were embedded into your body. And it's not. And phone transmitters at their peak are only just about as powerful as Wi-Fi routers. So you get your panicky mothers in and you tell them that they're being subjected to EMF radiation from their phones and they need to buy a MacGuffin to fix it. Yeah, that's pretty much the very definition of manipulating the fears of the most vulnerable people for profit. But it gets even worse. I mean, these things are basically metal plates. They act basically like mirrors for microwaves. So putting one of these on the back of your phone basically doubles the radiation that your brain receives.
Some actually increased RF, doubling the radiation when used like this, with the shielded front flap open, folded behind the phone, like many people use flip cases in the real world.
These frequencies usually get reflected like a mirror, so you're seeing what used to go out the back of it getting reflected to you.
And how did Pela describe that device again? Ethos can be described as a radiation reduction tool. Cool, not that it is a radiation reduction tool, but it can be described as one. It can also be described as a scam product by which really, really unethical companies scam worried mothers out of money. But coming back to the visible part of the spectrum, which mostly causes heating, fairly locally on the skin rather than more diffusely through the rest of the body. But Pela deliberately irradiated all of these women with studio lights, emitting EMF radiation, not at a mere 1/10 of a watt of power, like say for instance a Wi-Fi router, but at 100 watts. They deliberately irradiated women and babies with EMF radiation sources 1,000 times more powerful than their phones. Hell, they even set up an EMF radiation emitter directly next to the mother's head.
You wouldn't stick your head in a microwave. But what's protecting your head from your phone?
I mean, how evil could you get? And if we can't say definitively that the Wi-Fi signal is safe?
Now, the FCC notes no scientific evidence currently establishes a definite link between wireless device use and cancer or other illnesses.
How can we possibly know that this EMF power source, 100 times more powerful than it, is safe? Yeah, people don't get freaked out by 100-watt light bulbs and such like. And even less so when you consider that sunlight is about 1,000 watts per meter squared. Now you get beyond that, off the other end of the spectrum, into the ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma rays, that sort of thing. There the key feature is you absorb one of those photons. Usually the intensity is sufficiently low that it doesn't really cause that much heating, but they do break chemical bonds. And if you break enough chemical bonds within a cell, this leads to cell death. And if you get enough radiation to kill a lot of cells in your body, then it's like a whole body burn. Not that dissimilar to the burns that you would get off fire. And your body has to deal with a lot of dead cells at once. And if your body gets overwhelmed by that, then you basically die from the burn. This is why we call them radiation burns. And this is basically what acute radiation poisoning is. But you need a lot of intensity to do that. So, for instance, in Chernobyl, the only people who actually died from acute radiation poisoning were the firemen who basically walked around the exploded remains of an active core. Now, at much lower levels, the ionizing radiation causes none of these burn properties, and there is no acute radiation sickness, but elevated radiation levels, at some level, are linked to cancer. None of this, of course, is relevant for microwave radiation from phones, where the only hazard is a very, very small amount of heating. But that's not the only place where Pela cynically tries to manipulate panicky ignorance. I mean, imagine telling someone in one of your commercials that their phone case doesn't contain chemicals.
It's a Pela case. You know, made from plants. There's no chemicals in it. We do hold our phones for over 4 hours a day.
Yes, it contains no chemicals. It's made of pixie dust. Yeah, all phone cases are made from chemicals.
But the other 55% is not. So basically, half this case is some form of plastic, while the other half isn't.
And we know plastic doesn't go away.
I mean, even in the best case scenario where Pela's claiming that some of it is plant waste, it's still cellulose. You know, cellulose, the chemical. In fact, let's do it. Let's take a look at cellulose and the safety hazard sheets associated with it. Bear in mind, this is the chemical that Pela deliberately puts into their phone cases. It's also the wrapping that they use for their Ethos Wi-Fi protector. And what was that about children? Keep out of the reach of children.
Yeah, that's really neat. I didn't even think of that.
Read label before use. Do not eat, blah, blah, blah. Right. After inhalation, loosen clothing as necessary. Move exposed to give fresh air. Give artificial respiration if needed. After skin contact, rinse, flush exposed skin gently using soap and water for 15 to 20 minutes. They put this in a phone case that people hold for 4 hours a day.
We do hold our phones for over 4 hours a day.
Seek medical advice if discomfort or irritation persists. Yeah, in reality, of course, virtually all safety sheets, even for things that are completely harmless, read like this. But this is nonetheless the chemical that Pela puts in their phone cases.
Maybe in 10 years they'll say, oh, all those phones that you were using and, you know, keeping them around your baby, that was unsafe.
This is before you get on to the fact that about half of Pela cases are made up of regular plastic chemicals.
But why would I give up plastic? It's great. Sure, BPA and phthalates sound like nasty chemicals, but I'll spend 8 hours a day touching them. And look at me, I'm fine.
Yes, you are. And there's a very good reason for that. First of all, of course, you're wearing polyethylene. But even if you were in contact with bisphenol A, BPA, in fact, let's do it. Let's look up the safety sheets for BPA, bisphenol A. And we will find that safety measures are if you inhale it, get the person of fresh air at once. Hey, this sounds like what you had to do with the stuff that the Pela case is made of. Provide artificial respiration if needed, blah, blah, blah. Skin contact, immediately remove clothing. Wipe off the product immediately. Wash skin thoroughly with soap and water. Wow, sounds remarkably like the safety hazard sheets for the cellulose in the Pela cases. In fact, let's take a look at the BPA wiki page. The health effects of BPA have been a subject of prolonged public and scientific debate, with over 16,000 papers as of 2022. And the thing that I can tell you that is by the time you've got 16,000 studies on something and no clear conclusion, the effect is going to be tiny. And so we get to this. The interactions are all very weak, but exposure to BPA is effectively lifelong. Well, there's a lot of chemicals that you effectively have a lifelong exposure to, leading to concerns over possible cumulative effects. So the thing that is clear, right, if I were to ask this question about, say, for instance, cellulose, and I looked for and I had enough money to get 16,000 studies done on cellulose, but, you know, because exposure to cellulose is effectively lifelong, you may well also have concerns over cumulative effects. But the bottom line is that this isn't like smoking or something where there is a clear correlation between smoking and the harmful effects of it. This is, you have 16,000 studies and you're still not coming to clear conclusions. I mean, we're kind of in the same game as this exact fear-mongering that Pela is trying to sell people these scam Wi-Fi reduction products over. In that, there are billions of people around the world who have used mobile phones and the such like for decades. If there were a harmful effect from these things, you would be able to quantify it by now. The first line basically says it all. There is no known way, which basically means there is no way, in which radio frequency radiation, in contrast to ionizing radiation, affects DNA and causes cancer. Basically, there's no way it can happen. And you even scroll all the way down to the bottom here, and you will find bogus products. The products have been advertised that claim to shield people from EM radiation from the phones. The Federal Trade Commission published a warning that scam artists follow the headlines to promote products that play off the news and prey on concerned people. According to the FTC, there is no scientific proof that so-called shields significantly reduce exposure to EMF emissions. Products that block only the earpiece, which is not far off what we're doing here, or other small portions of the phone are totally ineffective because the entire phone emits EMF waves. Such shields may interfere with the phone's signal, causing even more power to communicate with the base station, possibly emitting more radiation. The FTC has enforced false advertising claims against companies that sell such products. Makes you think, doesn't it, Pela?
Yeah, that's really neat. I didn't even think of that.
And the same is true of the other chemical they were fear-mongering over.
Sure, BPA and phthalates sound like nasty chemicals, but I'll spend 8 hours a day touching them.
Phthalates, like say for instance polyethylene terephthalate, used in basically every pop bottle around the world. Yeah, if there was a health hazard associated with drinking out of these things, I think we'd know about it by now. Now at this point you might be saying, hang on, why are you giving Pela such a hard time here? Weren't they the ones who invented a $500 machine that required you to cut up your garbage into little pieces?
Long, fibrous, or hard food waste and cut it up to make it easier for Lomi.
So he could cook it before you throw it away.
There's a Reddit comment that totally reflected how I felt. It stated, what I always wanted, a $500 device that cooks my trash before I throw it away.
Which is apparently good for the planet because, cha-ching, $500 per unit. And when I pointed out that selling a massively overpriced, power-hungry, modified Breadmaker really wasn't a win for the planet, they got a lawyer to threaten to sue me unless I took down that video within 24 hours. Without waiving any of Pela's rights, immediate removal of the video is demanded.
Oh, that sounds like a really good deal.
Along with confirmation that the video or similar videos will not be reposted on YouTube or anywhere else. We have also contacted YouTube on this matter.
But I think I got a better one. How about I give you the finger?
Please note, Pela will aggressively defend its intellectual property rights and reputation and will take whatever legal steps are required should the need arise.
You can't scare me with this Gestapo crap. I know my rights.
However, Pela would prefer to resolve this matter efficiently without the need for further legal action. Yeah, they're doing it just to help me. Pela requests a written response no later than 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time within 24 hours, confirming the removal of the video. Now, naturally, when someone gets a real lawyer to write to you, you've got to be a little diplomatic about these things. So I started by saying that I looked forward to their analysis as to why they thought that my video wouldn't be covered under fair use, which is, of course, something they're legally required to do, because if they try and take the video down without considering fair use, they can be liable for the damages. So yeah, they got their reply within 24 hours. And I waited for a reply. I waited for 24 hours, and 48, and a week, and a month. I thought, hang on, might be time to chase this one up a little. So I decided to write back to their general counsel. Hi, Alan. It's now been about 9 months, and I'm still waiting for your analysis as to why you think my video was not covered under fair use. Is there a Reason for this delay? The analysis must surely have been done as due diligence before you asked me to take down the video for copyright reasons within 24 hours or face legal action some 9 months ago. Your letter noted no less than 31 instances of a copyright infringement. Surely you can justify why at least one of them wasn't covered under fair use. A cynical man might think that Pela was a greenwashing for profit company aggressively and maliciously abusing the legal system, or legal threats, to silence critics. If this were true, this is something I would take very seriously. But I'm sure this isn't Pela. I'm sure they care so much about the planet, they've been putting together a bulletproof analysis as to how my clips were not covered under fair use. I look forward to receiving your analysis in a timely fashion. Best wishes, Phil. And I almost immediately got this email back saying, I wrapped up my contract with Pela. Now, whether his contract with Pela really was just long enough to write one threatening email to me or not, I'm not sure. But rest assured that my incredible team will be happy to assist you. Please contact Jeff Keane at Pela Earth for support. This email box is not monitored. So I sent this email on to Jeff, who it turns out is the COO of Pela. Yeah, that's the legal team, apparently. And surprisingly, Jeff didn't reply within about a week. So I sent him another cheery little email. Hi Jeff, from what I can gather, you threatened to sue a lot of people. So allow me to remind you, I'm the guy who made this video, Lomi Busted. I'm still waiting for a reply to my email with Lomi threatens legal action over busted video. Also, when I finally get my hands on a Lomi, will I be able to make bread in it? Inquiring minds need to know. Smiley emoji. Along with Lomi hyper busted. Best wishes, Phil. And you'll be stunned to know that Jeff hasn't actually replied to that email. Seems like the COO likes to make legal threats, but doesn't like to deal with it when people fight back. But just for fun, I decided to look up the guy whose company's been threatening to sue me. And Okanagan is a beautiful place, but the most interesting thing about the guy is the number one item on his bucket list, which is travel on a Hyperloop. And I'm like, oh my god, really?
What a depressingly stupid machine.
That's today's video. If you enjoyed it, maybe drop a thumbs up on it. And if you really enjoyed it and don't want to miss out on more like this, then subscribing is a good option. And if you really like the work of this channel, you can support it directly through Patreon. Thanks for watching.